Why is the American attack on Iran being delayed? Reports indicate that President Trump received astonishing intelligence information about Iran just this week that could be affecting his decisions. However, the United States military is already launching a large-scale exercise, perhaps a dress rehearsal for strikes, while Iran unveiled a drone carrier, and the goal of the Revolutionary Guards is coming into view to turn the fighting into a multi-front crisis, as everyone in the Middle East is prepared for an all-out war. And meanwhile, Tehran is trying its luck with psychological warfare against the United States, threatening American carriers as other countries announce that they are closing their airspace and the territorial waters for an attack on Iran. Welcome to Boots on the Ground. I'm your host Yair Pinto, bringing you the whole truth about what's happening in Israel. So I return to the question that is occupying everyone. Why is the American attack on Iran being delayed? Today, TBN Israel's senior Middle East analyst Mati Shoshani will bring us a closer look at why it seems that the American strike on Iran is being delayed. It's not because of military limitations, but because of fear of a broad regional ignition, the strengthening of the Revolutionary Guards as a dominant governing factor, and of severe damage to the stability of the energy and also the global economy markets. And meanwhile, this week, United States Central Command announced an operational readiness exercise in which forces will deploy to emergency sites with the approval of the host countries. For their part, Iran published footage of a drone carrier deployed and ready to respond to any attack. Is the footage real? Is it fake? Or is it AI created? We'll take a closer look. And meanwhile, Turkey is preparing for the possibility of a wave of migrants from Iran declaring their intention to establish a buffer zone. Elsewhere, United States President Donald Trump declared that there is a fleet on its way to Iran. I hope they make a deal. That's what he said. At the same time, the Saudi Crown Prince joined the United Arab Emirates and said that the Saudis will not allow the use of their territory for an attack. In Baghdad, Iraq, volunteers, so to speak, are signing up for a pro-Iranian militia to fight together with Tehran. Also, Iran is escalating the threats towards the United States through a video that simulates attacking aircraft carriers using artificial intelligence, alongside the additional footage under the headline, "A message to the aircraft carrier Lincoln." In Beijing, they were alarmed enough by the recent events to send several cargo planes full with ammunition and supplies to their ally in Iran. Senior officials in the Quds forces of the Revolutionary Guards also held meetings this week with leaders of the Axis of Resistance ahead of a potential American strike. According to the report, the Iranians are trying to confuse the United States and open additional fronts in the event of a war, but Hezbollah will join the fighting only if the American strikes go beyond limited blows. And meanwhile, in the Gaza Strip, they continue to Phase B. Phase B of the ceasefire plan, and the United States is expected to announce a deadline for Hamas to disarm of its weapons already in the coming days. This is in order to define the process in advance and start rehabilitating Gaza. In addition, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will hold a limited discussion on Thursday with senior security officials, with the focus of the discussion being Gaza and the new arrangements inside the Gaza Strip. From the other side comes a report that the terrorist organization Hamas is spreading promises across the Gaza Strip, a promise that should worry Israel, including a refusal to disarm and a statement that the weapons in our hands are vital for defense against the occupation. In addition, Hamas is acting to integrate its approximately 10,000 police officers into the new management mechanism of the Gaza Strip, supported by the United States in a letter that Hamas published. It urged its employees in Gaza to cooperate with the committee and promised them that it is working to integrate them into the future government, basically giving them jobs in the future. Hamas members. Elsewhere, IDF Chief of Staff Eyal Zamir yesterday approved the plan for a large-scale attack in areas where the IDF has not yet operated inside the Gaza Strip, with the goal of defeating Hamas. In the security establishment, three options are being examined, from a political agreement on the timetable set by the Trump administration, through a limited military move, and up to full conquest and the establishment of a temporary military government. Today, we will understand together what is on the table. And finally, this week, we mark the International Holocaust Remembrance Day. Many events were held to commemorate this day, including the publication of the 2025 Antisemitism report of the World Zionist Organization, which revealed that anti-Semitism has become institutionalized and has even undergone normalization in many countries. And during the first 8 months of 2025, there was an increase of about 10% in anti-Semitic incidents, and 20 Jewish people lost their lives in anti-Semitic attacks. So we have a lot to talk about today. So let's dive into the details. I'm Yair Pinto, with me is Mati Shoshani, and this is your Boots on the Ground report, bringing you the whole truth about what's happening in Israel on day 844 of the war against Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, the Shiite militias in Iraq, and all the other armed groups in this region that are taking their orders from the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Corps in Iran, which is the head of the crumbling axis of evil in the Middle East. And a moment before we begin, I want to call on you to keep spreading the truth by pressing the share button and sending our content to as many people as possible. And of course, hit that subscribe button so that you stay tuned to what's happening in Israel, boots on the ground style. We start today's report with a look at the United States military's large-scale aerial exercise, which is currently on its way in the Middle East. It includes training missions for fighter jets, aerial refueling aircraft carriers and ships, also land-based radar installations, and much more. It is meant to simulate the dispersing of aircrafts to the emergency points in several countries in the Middle East to demonstrate the ability to sustain combat air power fast, far, and under demanding conditions. This is not an exercise on paper or even on the computer. This is a message of readiness, and alongside the exercise, the American force around Iran is growing and thickening, and that changes the rules of the game for all the sides. In the maritime arena, an American aircraft carrier and its escorting warships are already in this region. They're tightening the maritime noose around Iran. The battle group presents a simple message. If necessary, the United States wants an immediate response capability. And speaking of response, Iran is not waiting for explanations. According to intelligence reports coming from Gulf states, Iran deployed units of the Revolutionary Guards along its southern coast, equipped with anti-ship missiles, especially around the Strait of Hormuz and in the Gulf area. There is a focus on strategic points like Qasem Island and Bandar Abbas, and the logic is clear: to show they are ready to block the movement, threaten vessels, and turn any American approach into a dangerous story. But this is also an exercise in psychological warfare. Channels identified with the Revolutionary Guards circulated a video this week that simulates an attack on American aircraft carriers using artificial intelligence. At the same time, additional footage was distributed under the headline of a message to the American aircraft carrier that included fast boats in action and the launch of cruise missiles, as if it were a live demonstration projecting the message that we are waiting for you. Along that same line, footage was shown of an Iranian drone carrier with drones deployed and ready to respond to any attack, while the assistant commander of the Revolutionary Guards Navy for Political Affairs, Muhammad Akbarzadeh, threatened that there are capabilities that will be revealed in due time. He also directly linked the security of the Strait of Hormuz to decisions in Tehran. The message to neighboring countries is that if their territory, airspace, or maritime space is used against Iran, they will be considered hostile. This is already affecting countries all around this region. Saudi Arabia and the Emiratis conveyed a message this week that they will not allow the use of their territory for an attack on Iran, and everyone understands what could happen the day after. And meanwhile, the IRGC's proxies are also entering the frame. In Iraq, a pro-Iranian militia called to prepare for an all-out war and announced it would support Iran in every possible way. Volunteers were documented arriving in Baghdad, signaling documents, and committing to defend Iran. They are trying to project strategic depth. Not only Iran will fight, but the entire axis will be activated. What do you think about all of this? Should America and Israel be intimidated by Iran's AI videos and stories about volunteers arriving in Baghdad and pleading to defend Iran? Was it smart for Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates to forbid America from using their airspace and their territorial waters for an attack on Iran? What should America's other allies in this region do? Let me know what you think in the comments section. And meanwhile, President Trump spoke about an armada making its way towards Iran and expressed hope that they will make a deal. At the same time, he also threatened Iraq, saying that if Nouri al-Maliki returns to the role of Prime Minister, the United States will no longer help them. This is a way of telling Baghdad, don't let Iran pull you in. And while all of this is happening outside, within Iran, the regime is busy with repression. This week, they broadcasted forced confessions of detainees on state television. Hundreds of cases were reported, including staged interrogations, some of which apparently came after torture. There were also reports of thousands detained in the last wave of protests, an accumulative figure of more than 41,000 detainees. There are also reports of raids in hospitals with wounded protesters taken into custody despite not having recovered from their wounds. No one knows where they were taken to, and there are also reports that families are required to pay thousands of dollars to receive the bodies of their loved ones for burial. These reports come on top of recent reports of tens of thousands of fatalities during the height of the clashes between the security forces and the protests. Now look at the big picture. American air power participating in this deployment and all over this region are including naval power that is concentrating around Iran. Iran is positioning in response anti-ship missiles and threatening to close the Strait of Hormuz. Militias declaring that they'll defend Iran and endless psychological warfare to try and frighten Iran's enemies and neighbors. Of course, Israel is also part of the equation. After the 12-day war, the region has already seen what Israel is capable of, especially when it operates in coordination with the United States. So we are standing on the threshold of a decision point, and with many questions hovering over everything, I want to direct one of them to TBN Israel's senior Middle East analyst Mati Shoshani. Mati, if all of this force is already here, why has the United States not attacked Iran yet? But before we go into Mati for the answer, I want to invite you to hit that subscribe button so you never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. And also, as we move into the new year, I want to invite you to take part in something real, something rooted in the land, in the heart. The Rebuild Israel campaign is back, and this time we're planting life. In honor of Tu B'Shvat, we're establishing an apple orchard in Israel's northern border communities. This land has seen fear, destruction, and displacement. Now it's time to bring life back, tree by tree. This orchard isn't just about agriculture, it's about restoration and providing jobs, reviving communities, and showing the people of Israel that they are not alone. When you donate, you're not just giving, you're planting. Your support puts trees in the ground with real roots, with fruit, and with impact. We're turning a place marked by war into a place that grows once more. This is your opportunity to take part in the physical and the spiritual revival of the land of Israel. Go now to tbn.org/rebuildisrael or call 800-804-7895. Again, that's tbn.org/rebuildisrael or call 800-804-7895. Plant a tree, renew the land, bless the future. And now, we will move on to TBN Israel's senior Middle East analyst Mati Shoshani, as we are standing on the threshold of a decision point with the Middle East packed, filled with military hardware, the question hovering over everything, which is what I want to ask you, Mati, is if all of this force is already here, why has the United States not attacked Iran yet? Let us know.
The U.S. aircraft carrier, the Abraham Lincoln, just moved into the region with warships that carry Tomahawk cruise missiles. And the U.S. also pushed an RC-135 Rivet Joint into the CENTCOM zone, a high-end signals intelligence aircraft that listens, maps, and locates hostile emitters. This is the posture of a country preparing options. But the strike still hasn't happened. Now, why this matters right now? Because the delay is not empty time, it is a strategy, a very clear one on behalf of the US government. So Yair, you asked a very clean and simple question. Why has the United States not hit Iran yet? And what are they waiting for? Well, officially, the answer coming out of Washington is that the situation is still very much fluid, and the president keeps the cards close to his chest. My analysis is that the US is waiting for three things at the same time: a regional roadmap that will not explode in their hands, a political map at home that will not collapse under them, and an operational map that is fully ready with the intelligence gaps fully closed. Now, the president's message is a double message, both internally and externally. He threatens and he leaves the door open. He said there's a fleet on the way, and he says he hopes they make a deal. He says Iran wants to talk, and he says they know the conditions. So here's what matters. When a president signals both pressure and diplomacy, it means the strike is being used as leverage, not as a mood, not as an emotion, as leverage to force a political outcome, or at least to force Iran to blink first. And they just might. So let's dive into those details. Now, the main risk at hand at least, is not the first night. The main risk is the morning after, because this doesn't stay inside Iran or localized to Iran. Hezbollah's leader, Sheikh Naim Qassem, warned that a war on Iran could ignite the entire region. He even spoke about the possibility of Khamenei being targeted personally and framed it as an attack on stability. That is a deterrence message aimed at Washington and at Jerusalem, and it connects to what Iran is doing right now. Now, reportedly, Tehran is preparing a multi-front response to confuse the US and expand the fight beyond a single arena. Now, add the quiet but very critical factor. When can the Americans launch from, or where can they launch from, stage from, refuel from, and support their troops from? Some regional players are already signaling limits. Saudi Arabia, joined by the UAE in messaging, is being described as unwilling to allow its territory to be used for a launching pad for an attack against the US. That doesn't end US options, but it shapes them. It forces the US to rely more heavily on sea-based power, long-range aircraft, and a wider logistical chain. And in war planning, logistics are the message. If the map is not stable, you slow down even when the weapons are standing at ready. So look at Baghdad. There are reports of volunteers signing up after calls for a pro-Iran militia to fight alongside Tehran. And the US message is very sharp. If militias fire on American forces, the United States will respond. There's also a political warning tied to Iraq's leadership, with the president signaling consequences if certain figures return to power. Now, my analysis is simple. Iraq is a tripwire. If the US hits Iran, Tehran's easiest pressure valve is to light up Iraq, Syria, and the Gulf with proxy attacks and deniable fire. And Washington is trying to fence it off before the first missiles ever launch. And yes, the force is already building, but the data says that the US military is still completing deployment to be 100% ready. The CENTCOM commander, General Brad Cooper, met senior Israeli leadership, including the Chief of Staff, Eyal Zamir, and intelligence leadership. Some assessments say the talks include intelligence exchange on senior Iranian figures and additional targets. And I can't confirm details beyond what was reported, but the logic holds. When you intend to move, you lock targets, you validate patterns, and you reduce uncertainty. And that's why the RC-135 matters. It's not a symbol, it's a tool to shrink the unknowns. And now the economic layer. A strike that threatens the Straits of Hormuz is not just a military act, it's an energy shock. And an energy shock hits the global economy fast. It affects prices, it hits markets, and it targets voters. And that's why the text keeps coming back to energy stability and global economy fallout. The administration is also tightening pressure with sanctions tied to Iranian oil movements. Now, my analysis is that Washington is trying to squeeze Iran financially while keeping the region calm enough to avoid an oil panic. And they want maximum pressure without maximum fire. There's also a political ceiling inside the United States. A regional war can threaten congressional support, and a sharp rise in oil prices can flip skeptical voters. So the White House is weighing not only whether it can strike, but whether a strike will produce a strategic result that they're happy with. And the data warns about a bad win, a strike that does not topple the regime, but instead strengthens the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the regime's military and economic empire. The IRGC controls major levers, including parts of the economy, ports, oil exports, media influence, and intelligence structures. So a limited strike can unify Iran around the flag, even if the regime has been shown to be weak. Now this is the core of the entire situation. Iran is being described as politically brittle, economically strained, and still brutal in repression. There were protests, then a crackdown, then more unrest tied to currency collapse and sanctions pressure. But at the same time, there's evidence that external attacks can spark nationalism inside Iran, even if that unity fades later under economic reality. So Washington is waiting to choose a strike that changes the regime's behavior without gifting the regime a new legitimacy story. There's one more global layer. Reportedly, China flew 16 military transport planes into Iran in about 56 hours. And there are reports of unusual Russian flights too. That's not just a resupply. It's a signal that Tehran is not alone, and a strike can widen into a global alignment story. The American delay doesn't mean retreat. It means the US is trying to shape the battlefield, the region, the economy, and the diplomacy before it commits. America isn't waiting because it can't strike. It's waiting because it wants the strike to decide the future, not just a single skirmish or war. And now, back to Yair Pinto.
Thank you very much, Mati, for bringing your usual clarity to these vitally important and sometimes confusing issues. Now, a moment before we move to what's happening in the Gaza Strip in the war against Hamas, I want to invite you once again to be the ambassadors of truth by clicking that share, leaving a comment, liking this video, and hitting that subscribe button so that you never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. Now, we're shifting our focus to the Gaza Strip, because on Tuesday, IDF Chief of Staff Eyal Zamir approved plans for a large-scale attack in the Gaza Strip in areas where the IDF has still not operated. The goal was defined in simple words: to defeat Hamas. The security establishment is already presenting three alternatives for what comes next, from a political agreement to an American timetable, through a limited move, and up to a full conquest and a temporary military government. This matters now because for the first time after the hostages chapter, the entire campaign moves to one question: Hamas's disarmament. To explain, after all the hostages, the living and the deceased, returned to Israel, Israel currently controls more than half of the territory of the Gaza Strip. So the war is not over, but it has entered a decision stage where they no longer talk about another round, but about ending the campaign on one condition: Hamas's disarmament, and the Strip undergoes demilitarization. Without that, there is no rehabilitation. Without that, there is no different for a future for Gaza. There's no hope. We need to get the weapons out of Gaza, out of the hands of the terrorists. And Hamas, as of now, it refuses to cooperate with the vision for the future of Gaza. A senior official in the organization, Hussam Badran, said this week that the demand for disarmament is meant to sabotage Phase B of the agreement. From his perspective, this stage is supposed to bring a full Israeli withdrawal, the opening of infrastructure, rehabilitation, the entry of broad aid, and a political arrangement. He presents Hamas's weapons as a self-defense and claims this is an internal Palestinian matter that must not be dictated from the outside. And at the same time, Hamas claims that Israel is not meeting its commitments, mainly around opening the Rafah border crossing and withdrawing from areas where the IDF is deployed, currently in Gaza. From Israel's perspective, this is not a technical argument about mechanisms, but the core issue that led up this war and starting it in the first place. Prime Minister defined it publicly this week, saying Israel has only two goals: Hamas's disarmament and Gaza's demilitarization, adding that it will happen the easy way or the hard way, meaning either an agreement that dismantles Hamas's military power or a military move that defeats it for good. And behind the scenes, Washington is advancing towards a move that could change the pace of the events. The assessment is that the United States is expected to announce already in the coming days a deadline for Hamas to disarm in order to define the process in advance. Alongside that, a limited discussion is supposed to take place with senior security officials with a focus on the new arrangements in the Gaza Strip. This is supposed to officially mark the end of the hostage chapter and the transition to the next stage. And on the ground, operational details are also beginning to appear. The Rafah border crossing is expected to open for pedestrian movement in the coming days in an initial and limited format. The initial model speaks of a limited amount of about 50 entries every single day, with the names of those entering to be transferred in advance to Israel and checked by the Shin Bet and Kogat. The goal is to create a pilot, test, control, and allow continued examination of the Phase B arrangements. In parallel, the larger American picture is also taking shape. An initial American document signed by the president details how Gaza is supposed to be managed during the transition period. According to the document, a peace council will be established to serve as the temporary governing administration in the Gaza Strip and will oversee the implementation of a comprehensive plan. The document states that the ultimate decision maker will be the chairman of the council, the president himself, with broad authority to dismiss and to replace any kind of officials. Alongside this, an executive council is meant to be established along with the role of the High Representative for Gaza, who will actually manage the rehabilitation, the development, the police system, and the prevention of diversion of aid to terror elements. Former Bulgarian Foreign Minister Nikolai Mladenov was appointed to this position. In parallel, an international stabilization force is also planned with a commander that is defined as holding operational authority over the forces. So, the document sharpens a principle that has been repeated again and again. Gaza must be freed of terror. Whoever does not act according to this will not participate in government, in rehabilitation, in development, or in aid distribution. There is also a clause that says that foreign terror organizations and bodies that had a history of cooperation or infiltration by Hamas are barred from participation. The document also states that residents who want to leave the Gaza Strip will be free to do so, and those who remain will get an opportunity to rebuild their lives. In parallel, humanitarian zones and controlled civilian corridors are planned in order to deliver aid to residents who need it. However, Hamas is also presenting plans, and some of them worry Israel. Hamas is working to integrate about 10,000 of its police officers into the new American-backed governance and its mechanism. In a letter distributed to government employees in the Gaza Strip, Hamas urged more than 40,000 civilian servants and security personnel to cooperate with the new committee, but promised them that it is working to integrate the existing manpower into the future government. Hamas spokesperson Hazem Qassem said that the organization is ready to transfer governing powers to the committee immediately, but he is confident it will rely on the mechanisms that already exist on the ground. From Israel's perspective, this is an attempt to change uniforms and signs and keep the same control, and here the debate over Phase B comes in. There are those who present the return of Qatar and Turkey to the field as something worrying. But within a new reality being built in Gaza, with the American oversight, there is another argument that the benefit to Israel is greater than the risks. Israel's freedom of security action, along with the ability to thwart infrastructure in the making and to eliminate an attempted attack in real time, is supposed to be preserved. Within this space, the dismantling of Hamas's infrastructure and the demilitarization can become a gradual process, even if not fast. And security officials remind that this is an event of years, even if personal weapons will be registered and dismantled gradually. And meanwhile, Hamas is playing for time. According to assessments quoted around the talks, the organization still holds hundreds of rockets and thousands of light weapons. There is also talk about an idea of neutralizing weapons or a long-term ceasefire of 5 years or more. But Hamas conditions all of this on a political process to establish a Palestinian state, within which the weapons and the fighters would transfer to the responsibility of the state. And from Israel's perspective, this is not an answer, but simply a delay. Therefore, the IDF Chief of Staff approved a plan for decisive action, and in the security establishment, 3 options were presented. First, a political arrangement in which Hamas disarms under a clear deadline set by the Trump administration, and in Israel, they assess it is about 2 months. The second, a limited military operation that applies pressure to bring about surrender without full decisive victory immediately. And the third, full decisive victory and conquest of the Gaza Strip, followed by military or international control, but with an assessment that in any case a military government will be established first, at least for a short period. And the last sentence that keeps repeating in the corridors is this: now there is no hostage constraints in the Gaza Strip. That changes the operational space. Gaza is therefore facing the stage that will decide whether Hamas disarms or whether the Gaza goes into the next confrontation, this time all the way to the end. We'll get into all the details, but first we want to bring you a special interview from our studios in Jerusalem with our own TBN Israel director, Samuel Smadja, that we recently conducted this interview with Reverend Peter Fast, the international CEO of Bridges for Peace. Let's watch it together.
Thank you, Yair, and to you, our friends, shalom, shalom from Jerusalem. We're sitting here at the studio of TBN overlooking this beautiful city of Jerusalem, a city that God himself has chosen. And today I have a good friend, Reverend Peter Fast, the international CEO of Bridges for Peace in Jerusalem. Bridges for Peace is a Christian organization that stood with Israel, I think, already over 30 years. Reverend Peter, tell us about yourself.
Well, I was born into a Christian home, Christian family. My dad's a pastor for 46 years, involved in ministry, both sides of the family. I'm Canadian. Before I was born, my parents went to Israel multiple times in the 1970s. So growing up, I saw Israel and God connected the dots in my heart. So it wasn't just Israel of the Older Testament. It was, this is what God is doing both then and now. Bringing the Jewish people home, building up the nation, prophecy being fulfilled. So that's the early roots. And then the Lord worked in my heart and gave me a real calling and a burden for the nation of Israel and the Jewish people around the world.
For me, it's encouraging to see a young pastor, a young leader, a young Christian leader coming and dedicating his life for Israel.
Absolutely.
Why? And how come we don't see it too much among young pastors?
You know, I'm someone who, I love history, I look at history, the Bible is full of it. But it's also not just ancient history, it directs us somewhere. It shows us where this world is going. The Bible presents God as the God of Israel and the God of the nations, and these two things coming together, and God at work, even looking at in Romans, being grafted in. And that took root in my own life. I believed that. It's a role and a special role calling for Israel, not that there's superior to other people. It's distinction and unity. And we're grafted, we're attached to that, and this is who God is. That resonated with me, that spoke to me, and I see it with my eyes, and I know other people can see it, and they don't see it. And I maybe that harkens back to the prophets, even calling on Judah at the time. You'll see things, but you won't believe them. We also have 17 centuries of people saying, this is how you read the Bible. And most of the church fathers never, ever thought or saw or believed that this would happen. The Jewish people will never return. They're just a living witness that we've won, a triumphalism. So when the Jewish people do return in the nation and we see this, every Christian is going to have a decision to make. And I believe the global church was split into 3 camps. People who suddenly said, look, prophecy coming to life. God is faithful. Even when we're disobedient, he still is faithful. He's covenant keeping. And so they saw what was happening here. They believed it. Others said, this has nothing to do with God. This is a secular return. This is this and this.
So for you, the return of the Jewish people was not a result of Zionistic movement or a secular movement that happened because of the Holocaust and the end of the Second World War. We need to find a homeland for the Jewish people and let's find a solution for these people. For you, it's something way bigger.
It's way bigger. You know, I think these are mistakes when people think, oh, Israel was only created because of the Holocaust, or Jews come from this place or that. We say that this is not only just their ancestral homeland, but there's always been a Jewish presence in the land. So, and that's what a lot of people forget. There's always been Jews living in this land, way before what we would describe as the modern Zionist movement. So there's always been a connection, Jewish for people for over 2,000 years, say, Lashana Chaba'a Be'Yerushalayim, next year in Jerusalem, no matter where they are. They face this city, this is the city of the great king, and for millennia and time immemorial, they face it in their prayers. So it's more than just kind of a modern Zionism.
Can you elaborate why it's so important for Christians to understand the Jewish roots?
When you think about, as Paul starts writing his epistles, when he's speaking to non-Jews, he's speaking to pagans, so people that are far off, very foreign in their beliefs, and he's like in Ephesians 2, he's saying, but you've been brought in and attached to the commonwealth of Israel through Messiah. And Romans 11, you're being grafted in. In John 4:22, even Jesus, Yeshua says to the Samaritan woman, salvation comes from the Jews. So when an outsider engages and responds through faith with God, he is the God of Israel. We don't replace it, we don't take it over, but we inherit, we join an amazing heritage and tradition. Our Messiah is Jewish. When we look at all the roots of our faith, you know, I say the King James Bible didn't come down on Mount Sinai. So the language, Hebrew, the culture, everything, even the terms that we use today, discipleship, baptism, all of these terms come from a Hebraic context and root. So it's not telling Gentiles, oh, you suddenly have to try to become Jewish, but it's like understanding who we are, who God is. God loves everybody, but he has a unique calling and plan for Israel, and he attaches the nations to that. It's global.
Bridges of Peace. What's unique about you guys?
What's unique is that when we look back at history, non-Jewish Christians have had very little engagement with the Jewish people in history. Genuine, unconditional love. We build relationships between Christians and Jews around the world, not just in Israel. We have 8 different nations, and those nations educate the church. We pray for the church. We take people to Israel. We inform them. We want them to love the Lord. We want them to increase their love for Yeshua deeper. And so we're connecting them to that, but we also are going to partner with the Jewish community. In Israel, that is seen as in a very practical, unconditional love type work. And so on a monthly basis, we're feeding over 24,000 people,
wow,
60 tons of food. We work with Holocaust survivors. We're working in schools. 350 children every month are getting hot lunches, school backpacks. It is hard to break out of a cycle of poverty. So we invest ourselves into that. We have impacted every level. We buy bomb shelters, we buy ambulances, so on and so forth.
You've been here at the 7th of October.
Yes.
Do you see any change in the work of Bridges of Peace before the 7th of October and after the 7th of October?
On October 7th, I mean, the whole world changed. So did Bridges for Peace. On October 9th, we got a call from the military because there was a collection point. I mean, all of Israel was still waking up to the reality of what October 7th was. We could never have imagined that thousands of Hamas terrorists infiltrated, thousands of civilian looters and plunderers, and that over 1,200 Jews, actually mostly Jews, but even Muslims and other people, were murdered on that day, and 252 kidnapped. By October 9th, we were still waking up to that. But this is what Bridges does. We get a call, we need you, and we need you in Sderot. And what I did, I drove one van, and 2 of my colleagues drove another van, and we drove 500 bags.
By the way, Sderot is a city at the border of Gaza.
And it has a history, it's like the bomb shelter capital of the world. So many rockets come to Sderot. So we drove down to Sderot, and I remember feeling uneasy. I prayed, and the Lord gave me courage. I had a bulletproof vest and a helmet on the seat next to me. And when we turned off that highway going straight south, all civilian vehicles disappear. It's just military, checkpoints everywhere, and somehow we got through. And driving into Sderot was like an apocalypse film. It was like something I've never seen before. You could see missile trails coming through the sky, burned vehicles. There were still bodies out, destroyed buildings. And we drove in, and Sderot is about a city of 40,000 people, totally empty. The only people present were soldiers still clearing the city. You could hear the echo of gunshots, and what I found out later was the last Hamas terrorist that came through on the 7th was killed 3 weeks later. So what we didn't fully understand is, now I know, we were driving into a war zone. We drove to the center of Sderot, dropped off 500 bags of food, and drove out. A few of our Jewish partners have said to us, and I can't verify this, but they've said to us, we think you might have been the first Christians on site doing a delivery right after the 7th.
Beautiful.
And that gives you an example of how it's changed everything.
Peter, you're very vocal about Israel. But there are people watching us, and today with anti-Semitism around the world, they have second thoughts. And maybe they're afraid even to defend Israel so vocally. Can you say something about it?
What I remind people is this. It's not about Israel, it's not about me, it's not about you, it's about God first. I love Israel like I do because I also want to love what God loves. And I see God working through Israel. So I don't want to be against God. I want to seek truth, I want to seek His word, and I'm going to stand on that and love what God loves. Within days after the 7th, I really had this, almost like an epiphany. I saw it as there's darkness and light. We see that those are clear themes in the Bible, right at creation, and there is light. Jesus calls Himself the light of the world. Being a light means you have to count the cost. It doesn't help anything if I support Israel and pray for Israel behind 4 walls, you know, and nobody knows. The disciples, yes, they followed Yeshua, but if they had never said, we got to go out, if they'd never been obedient, because Yeshua said, go to the world. If they had said, that's scary, we might get killed, we might get stoned, but they did it. And so that's the thing, is we count the cost for the sake of truth. God will guide you, He will direct you. That might mean pastors lose their jobs, people get intimidated, get canceled, but what am I willing to do to be in right standing with God and pursue what God loves?
As an Israeli, grew up here all my life, as a head of a tour company here in Israel, I saw pastors coming to Israel all the time. And now I see a big difference between pastors above 50 who love and stand with Israel, and the younger pastors, I don't say they don't love Israel, but they don't take a clear position about Israel.
Yeah. I think the social justice movement is a massive one that has caused a lot of confusion. Let me say this, God loves justice. God is just, 100%. But what the world, especially the West, is trying to say is, what is man's justice, and define it by ourselves. And there is this very strong, I believe, deceptive tone in the West that is trying to frame Israel and make it this unjust, evil entity, and victimizing other people. The pastors in these nations are susceptible to that. They love the Lord. They want, like you said, the gospel to spread. They want to impact their communities and things like this. But we know from history, Jewish people have often been the scapegoat, and there's nothing new under the sun in a way. You look at the anti-Israel rhetoric and the lies today, and if you just remove Israel and put the word Jew, okay, now you just have historic anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism, you know, Israel becomes the metaphorical Jew. And those are very powerful poison chalices. Those intimidate, and they also confuse. And so young pastors need to be educated, they need to see Israel, and they need to understand Israel's heart. Israel's heart is to take care, not perfectly, because they're an imperfect nation like everybody else, but they strive for morality and to take care of the unfortunate. And this Gaza war has demonstrated that, for everything from leaflets to humanitarian aid to moving around populations to rescuing people. It's incredible what the nation of Israel has done. But I've heard recently, for every pro-Israel video that's released in social media, 95 anti-Israel videos.
Peter,
that's what you're up against.
We have pastors watching us from all over the world.
Yeah.
I would love you to speak to the young pastor and tell them, why do you think they should stand with Israel?
I think that they should stand with Israel because this is the heart of God. This is covenantal faithfulness, and it includes you. It will illuminate the Bible. It will illuminate truth, and you will see the signs, and you will see God at work and moving in a way that you've never experienced before. And you are a part of it. You're joined to this. It's not just Israel and you. You are joined to this. And so this is prophetic, and this is redemption.
Amen. Peter, thank you very, very much. Thank you for the work of Bridges for Peace, and I can say that as an Israeli.
Yes.
Thank you very, very much. And to you, our friend, I think Peter encouraged us to be a voice, to speak, to be bold for the truth, and more than all, continue to pray for the peace of Jerusalem and try to be a bridge to peace in your family, wherever you are. Shalom, shalom from Jerusalem. Back to you, Yair.
Thank you very much for this powerful interview, Samuel. Now, I want to encourage all of you to keep praying for the situation, as we know that God is in control. So pray for all the leaders that are involved to make the right, godly decisions, and keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.